Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. According to Vermont's Department of Environmental Conservation, about 55% of properties in the state have their own wastewater treatment system, commonly known as a septic system. Private septic systems are used when there is no access to a municipal septic system. Whether it's private or municipal, systems can break down or become overloaded, which in turn causes water quality problems. To begin today's program, Rebecca Gollin tells us how some homeowners are tackling the wastewater issue on one of Vermont's most problematic lakes.
It's a field of dreams sort of thing. Build it and they will come.
It's not everyone's idea of a field of dreams, but for septic and wastewater technician Jared Willey, this innovative septic system on the shores of Lake Carmi in Franklin has a lot going for it.
So we provide a home for aerobic bacteria, and we provide the necessary environment for them to thrive, and they do all the work for us.
This is an Advantex system. It's one of the approved, innovative, alternative septic technologies in Vermont.
It's a recirculating system, so effluent that exits the septic tank is held and recirculated over the top of the filter. It feeds the bacteria that live inside the textile. The bacteria do the work of the treatment, and then there is clean water coming out of the other side going to a soil absorption system, in this case a bottomless sand filter.
This system was installed about a year ago. The traditional septic that was in place before it was not failing according to the standards set by the state, but the homeowner reached a point where he needed to upgrade.
Well, when we bought the camp in '06, we had a 2,000-gallon holding tank, which basically, when it was full, you had to empty. So it was okay for a few years, and then it got to where we were spending more time at the lake. It got to be an inconvenience where we were having to get it pumped every, maybe 3-4 times a year. So we decided to put in a good system that would be, environmentally friendly to the lake.
Randy Farrar and his family decided to go with an alternative system, and after weighing their options, this Advantex was the best fit for their property. The waste moves through the tank, eventually draining the treated water that's the end product to the large sand pit out front. The entire unit has an internet-based telemetry system, which means that the maintenance operator, in this case Willie, can log in remotely to check on the conditions.
For instance, if there's a high-level alarm, or if there's a leaking toilet, or some other condition that would require maintenance. It allows us to, in most cases, only visit the site once a year. So it's kind of our eyes and ears on the site. We think about these systems like miniature wastewater treatment plants, because really they are.
While maintenance is important for all septic systems, it's also a requirement by the state. In 2007, the Department of Environmental Conservation took over permitting septic systems. Before that, those permits were issued by individual towns, so there were different standards around the state.
What happened in 2007, all systems were grandfathered in. So you may have a system that doesn't have a permit, and that's fine. But if you add a bedroom or that system fails, then you will be required to get a permit. Or if you change your land use, the use of your property, or if you convert from a seasonal property around a lakeshore like this to an all-year use, then you will be required to get a permit.
Graham Bradley oversees the septic permitting process for the state. He says that for those systems that were grandfathered in, problems can occur. An improperly maintained septic system can discharge pathogens or nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen to groundwater and the lake. That's long been a problem here at Carmi, which was recently the first lake in Vermont to be declared a lake in crisis. And while aging septic systems are part of the problem, they're only one piece of the puzzle.
We have to think of the number of sources of phosphorus. There's surface water running over the land surface and bringing phosphorus from an excess of fertilizer or manure placed on the land, but there's also phosphorus coming through the groundwater from septic systems around the lake. Now, it's fair to say that we know that the majority of nutrients is coming across the surface from different land uses, but here at Lake Kamai, we're coming to an understanding that we all need to do something to try and reduce that amount of phosphorus entering the lake.
For those who do want to explore alternatives when the time comes to replace their septic, there are a number of options. This Advantech system is just one example. There's alternative, innovative treatments that can be suited to almost any property.
All homeowners should make informed decisions about what to do when they're faced with a septic upgrade. Things like how much space the system will take up, how much the system will cost to maintain. We talk about life cycle costs a lot, and one system might be cheaper to install but more expensive to operate.
Besides Farrar, a number of homeowners around Lake Kamai have upgraded to alternative systems.
It may not be for everyone, but it's a great system. It just has a very low impact on the environment. So if that's where you're trying to go, I think it's a good system.
It's an innovative technology that's helping these lakeside neighbors keep their waste where it belongs, in the septic tank. In Franklin, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Our next segment is all about a breed of goats that you may have seen on the internet, but you probably know very little about. Keith Silva has the details.
Pay attention to this goat. Let's watch that again. This time in slow motion.
When you mention myotonic goat, people look at you funny, but if you say fainting goat, everybody knows who they are.
Myotonic goats go by many names: stiff goats, nervous goats, Tennessee fainting goats, and best of all, the Texas wooden leg. Whatever you call them, they were made this way.
It's a genetic fault. Both parents have to carry a copy of that genetic fault in order for their kids to faint. If you carry one copy, they will not do it.
Fainting goats don't faint so much as fall over. And for the record, no goats were harmed in the making of this story.
They don't literally faint like you or I and go out. They get an oversized body cramp, and if they're moving forward, they will fall and freeze. It doesn't hurt them. Goes 5 to 20 seconds. They get up, walk stiff-legged, and off they go and continue their day as normal. The older goats, they feel it coming on and they will brace themselves. They actually get into a stance where the legs all sprawled out, and rarely do they go over. The babies, it's game on. I mean, they'll be playing in midair and down they go and scream and flop like fish. They get used to it, they learn to feel that mechanism coming on, and they will start to brace themselves.
Sherry Siebenaller has been raising fainting goats at Morgan Hill Farm in North Hero since 2008. She first learned about this rare goat breed as a child.
I grew up on a dairy farm, so animals were always in my background. And as a kid, every kid that deals with animals usually wants a goat. I had a book and I opened it and there was this Tennessee fainting goat, and I was like, what on earth? And from that moment on, I was intrigued. I mean, that was many, many, many years ago. And I could not find any of them. There was absolutely nothing up in this northern hemisphere of the United States. They were all down south, and I couldn't afford to buy one and bring it up. I found some by accident in New York State. The doe had just had kids. And I looked at the lady and I said, oh my goodness, what are you doing with those? She said, I think I'm going to sell them. I said, sold. And we bought the 2 doelings, and that was the start of this 60 some odd goat herd.
Fainting goats don't do so well in the wild, for obvious reasons, which makes them the perfect breed for anyone gung-ho to get into the goat game.
They are the quietest, easiest to handle goats in the world because goats are notorious for getting out of fencing. These goats literally cannot climb because they'll faint. They fall over, so they can't go leaping over fences and crashing through things. It's just not in their DNA.
Laughs aside, these goats have a purpose: meat. It's another added benefit thanks to their DNA.
When they faint, it acts kind of like a steroid. So they tense up, and what that does is when that happens, it builds muscle. Muscle is meat, and at the same time, it tenderizes it. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to go out and scare your goat every day. Our goal was to try and get a genetic pool that produced a very meaty goat, meaning nice shoulder, front end, and a rear end. And we're getting there.
Siebenthaler is currently enrolled in a USDA program she hopes will eventually allow her to sell her goats overseas. For now, she markets the meat, along with goat's milk soap that she makes, at local craft shows and through word of mouth. The goats are only one of the animals Siebenthaler cares for. She also raises purebred Labrador retrievers and colored Morgan horses, for whom Morgan Hill Farm gets its name. For Siebenthaler, raising animals is a way to manage stress and keep a connection to the land.
I wake up in the morning and think I'm crazy. I'll admit it. But I walk out here in the morning, and when the goats see me, it's like your kids. They all talk to me. They all want to come up to the fence. They all want to say hello. And in this crazy world that we live in, it's so much nicer to just walk out here and know I'm appreciated.
We could all use more stress relief and comic relief in our lives. And that's nothing to kid about.
Come on, go to goat!
In North Hero, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Go goat!
Our thanks to Sherry and her goats at Morgan Hill Farm. And as always, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.